right, so yeah, a very fast run through what's possible, what's happening. And I'm very happy that we have you here on the panel. But let me first introduce every one of you. And I'm starting with Mike, Commander Mike Widmann from the NATO. Mike is currently leading the Defense Cyber Operations branch at NATO Maritime Command. So out on the seas, yeah. And previously he served in leadership roles at NATO's cyber defense centers, focusing on strategy and interagency collaboration, which is a very important topic. Then we have Andrea Szeiler, a passionate leader in cybersecurity, currently serving as the global CISO at Transcom. And Transcom is a large organization of customer experience services with over 36,000 employees across the world. So a very broad perspective. She's also a mentor and proud president of Women for Cyber in Hungary, a very important topic I think we'll also be covering in various panels today, but let's also talk about how can we increase diversity in cyber. Has a very strong practical and risk-based focus. And Andrea helps organizations to safeguard their operations and clients' data. And again, a huge round of applause.
Thanks.
And then we have Fred Mario Silberbach, and he's the head of cybercrime of the cybercrime subdivision at the Bundeskriminalamt. For our international viewers, that's the German FBI. And he brings over 36 years of experience in law enforcement, but obviously also with a focus on cybercrime strategy and policy. He played a key role in combating cyber threats, working closely with Europol and Interpol, I think, as well. With a strong background in criminal law, Fred Mario is an expert in both national and international cybercrime investigations. We talked about forensics earlier. As with all panels, we have a Slido. So this was already mentioned. So please feel free to use Slido to put in your questions, which we will be trying to answer at the end of the panel. But let's get started. First, Fred Mario. So let's maybe start very high level at the overall threat landscape. I talked about our view. I mentioned the BSI report. Obviously, the BKA has also a very deep insight into the threat level. But what's your take? What are your readings? What are the top points on the threat level that you see from the law enforcement perspective?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I can confirm a lot of your information you gave in your presentation about the actual and current threat levels. I want to start with the current situation and also with a short view back, because to assess the current threat level from today, we have to know from where we come. So start with a few numbers. We have 134,000 cases that were complained to the police in Germany. But we have a so-called dark field. We only know around about 11% of the cases that really had happened in Germany. So you have to multiply these 134,000 by 9. And then in the German police statistics, we only count the cases where the crimes were committed in Germany. As we all know, cybercrime is global. So in the next year, we will publish the first time also the cybercrime cases where the crimes were committed in foreign countries, but the loss was here. I can tell you now that we already have a higher number of cases committed in foreign countries than in Germany. So let me say at least 130, 140,000 cases also. Then we talk together from 280,000 and then multiplied by 9. So that gives you another impact of how many cases really could probably happen in Germany. And if you count around, we have 80 million of persons, then you can get an idea how many months it will take until everybody of you becomes a victim. So just a few details to the development, and the numbers we have today are 50% more than 8 years ago, so we have a high development. The crimes become a better quality. Years ago, when there were mostly phishing campaigns to to cheat the people in doing their online banking. Now we have another under-industry. We have well-organized groups, we have networks, we have an international and global industry of the so-called dark net markets or the underground economy. We talk about cybercrime as a service. So there are groups that code malware, there are groups that crypt malware, there are groups that try to hide malware that they cannot be detected by antivirus companies. There are groups that provide you, when you want to become criminal, with infrastructure, bulletproof hosting. We have groups that develop and offer you money exchange, money laundering services. So we have 9 pillars, 9 relevant pillars about cybercrime. And this is a large development until today. And we see it in the quality of attacks, ransomware especially. Yeah, now institutions, companies, small, medium, and big companies get attacked and with blackmailed, and they have to pay a lot of money. And you just also explained it in your presentation. We have these geopolitical developments. We see that normal crime groups now also work with permission, more or less with permission of states. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have DDoS attacks. We have DDoS attacks from criminal groups. They now also working on the field of politically motivated cybercrime. So as a conclusion, we have a high level of cyber threat. And my conclusion is, it's not a question if anybody of us gets attacked. It's only a question of when.
And what we do then in that
exactly.
case. But Mike, maybe that's a perfect connection. I mean, Fred Mario was talking about, you know, the actor landscape, and then also the collaboration between very specialized actors and the intersection of geopolitics and cybercrime. Now, you obviously have a very special perspective at NATO, also a very international organization. But with that defense lens, is this also something you see there, or what else is NATO seeing from the threat level point of view? And like, can you tell us a little bit more about these actors that are across the board?
So from a NATO point of view, we're looking more like state actors. But to Fred's point, a lot of the things that he talks about from the criminal aspect does bleed over into national defense. So when we talk about attacks on like companies that own critical infrastructure, things like that, a lot of people don't realize how much militaries depend on civilian agencies to, especially for things like logistics, moving things, everything like that. So the criminal element is huge. But when we talk about nation states, you're looking at, you know, they have different motivations for what they do. So a country like China, they're using most of their cyber forces to get intelligence, to do espionage, to understand why nations make the decisions that they make, and figuring out ways where they can manipulate different nation states to, you know, to see things through their national view. Talk about a country like Russia. They had primarily, before the war in Ukraine, been looking to get a foothold into different networks, especially critical infrastructure. But you know, just in case we go into conflicts, they would have another venue by which they could launch attacks. After the war in Ukraine, we've actually seen some of the destructive elements of their cyber warfare, what they can do, wiper, malware, things like that. Then you also talk about like your North Koreas. So when you think about a nation state like North Korea, it's more of a rogue nation state. You know, it's their recognition on the world stage is pretty diminished. So they actually go towards more of a criminal model by which they use the you know, cyber aspects to do things like ransomware to raise money for their regime.
Mm. Yeah, they need the foreign currency. We talked about AI and evolving technologies. Is there something that you see there as well in the mix?
Yeah, so definitely AI. We've seen. So one of the things with working for a military and national government, an organization like NATO, we're a bit hesitant to bring that type of technology in to the field that we work in. We have gotten better at that. NATO has come up with an organization that's standing up right now called Diana, Defense Innovator Accelerator of the North Atlantic. And they're looking at working with startups and different entities that can bring in this new technology, dual-use technology that we can use to better defend our networks. So there are initiatives like that. I know, like in the United States, they've got the Defense Innovation Unit, again, joining up with venture capitalists to see what technology can be brought in to help us defend our networks. But what we're seeing is that our adversaries are definitely using these technologies as quick as they can to get an advantage, and with the realization that we're a little bit a step behind just because of the inertia within governments and militaries.
Andrea, I don't want to take that point of inertia and implying that the private industry is maybe a little bit faster, but Transcom is a very global organization. So I can only assume you see a lot and you see differences. And hearing these trends, the actors, what can you tell us, like from the private industry and private business lens of a very, very international company?
Yes, and on the top of it, we are a vendor on this market, means that we're serving a lot of clients, and some of them cannot be named here as well, because it's also a layer of protection. And obviously, they are attacking us to reach them. And this makes our life a bit harder. We have a very patchwork environment, implementing all the clients as campaigns, and they are unique for each. And in the traditional protection, we said, OK, we control everything, can reach our agents, no email, no phones, just simple call center services. But right now, we have to expand. Now we are on omni-channel, and you said the attacks now targeting WhatsApp and all the other medias. And it's happening. So we're continuously facing with such attacks. Also, a few weeks ago, we had personalization of our new CEO. They prepared. So we just replaced the CEO, and then now all the scams changed accordingly to be fresh and appropriate to the new stages. And there are also voice scams as well. And we experienced the fact that the phishing mails and the language in the phishing mails are much more perfect than in the past. I'm a Hungarian person. My language is the worst on the earth, hardest to learn. And in the past, it was easy to catch up that, OK, guys, it was a good try, but it's very far from how we talk. And now it's perfect. With the perfect grammar, with the perfect wording. So it's much more harder to figure it out.
And I mean, obviously, what you describe is a situation where the majority of people and the majority of employees are probably assuming that this is not possible, right? And as a Hungarian, there was a very small group of actors that could actually pull it off. Now it can be done. Is this something you're also you're helping your employees in the call centers to upskill them to spot that? Because this period, I could imagine, is very, very risky because many employees are still thinking that's science fiction, it's not possible.
Yes, we have two kinds of employees, agents and non-agents. They are targeted with different attacks. Agent can train, let's say, in a bulk, and you can target the trainings according to their campaigns, what kind of tools they are using, and you can train them mostly via email phishing campaigns. Non-agents are the most dangerous people on the earth, like myself. We can reach everything. We can reach our private emails as well in some cases. And the attacks, as you mentioned, are moving there. I also received calls from banks that I have to transfer money. And because I was in the transaction processing industry, I'm easily able to understand that this is a scam because how they try to do it against how the system works. But the majority of the people won't recognize it. So I just want to echo, beyond your company, you have to train your family, your friends. And I did it always, and it works well. I'm very proud of my sons because they do the same in the schools. And they were able to protect themselves against typical scams. They have Minecraft server farm, and they were also targeted by attacks. And just turned to me, and I helped them to solve it. So it's extreme how it's expanding and targeting now everyone on the earth.
And you mentioned education and actually the task that also our education systems have in front of us, because this is something we talk about a lot. People might think that the younger generations, the digital natives, they are better protected, but just recently I read a study that the opposite is the case. They are very trained to just swipe and squeeze, and they don't know what's going on inside of a computer, so this is a huge task in front of us.
Yes, definitely, and I encourage every nation to introduce this training in the school, at the elementary school level, because the children reach this technology at a very young age, and they can learn a lot via them, but it's very dangerous for them. They don't know what they can share, how to share, what can be believed on the media. So I have a lot of conversation with my sons, mentioning to them that it's great, but it's far from reality, what you read. And we have this arguing a lot, because it was in Britain. And I just remember my grandmother when she said, it was in the TV, it has to be true.
Yeah.
So the same applies here.
Yeah, yeah, and so again, coming back to Lacey, we need to spread the word, and that can help. Fred Mario, Mike was telling us a little bit about the motivations and the targets that various actors have. One thing that some of these actors have is spread insecurity or the feeling of distrust in societies, but also maybe target us very specifically on a tangible level, talking about critical infrastructure. What's your take here? It's very important, but what has been the development on critical infrastructure?
Yeah, it's in general hard to analyze correctly because, as I mentioned, we have a dark field. So there are a lot of cases that we don't get to know, but we see two major types of crimes. Crimes where like a wave over the world, the crimes, the spam mails, the phishing mails get disseminated to find a victim, to find a person who clicks on a link and something else, to find the entrance. That's one way. So with the quantity of for example, phishing mails, they try to find the backdoor somewhere in an insecure IT system. The other type are the focused attacks, where you really analyze before the company, the institution you want to attack, especially espionage groups from other countries, but also criminal groups. They really analyze the possible victims. They use the information of social engineering. They check the CEO, the board of the chief execution level, who opens a project in China, okay, and then they try to start with the deep fakes. Yeah, you receive a video call, you think it's your colleague, you see the voice, you hear the voice, you see the face, you see the lips, but it's not your colleague, it's a deep fake. And these cases happened. So, and that's a very dangerous type of crimes because the criminal enemy invests a lot of resources. And the human factor is one factor that can be vulnerable, and then they have the first foot into the door of companies. So it's, and we see also, with regard to our statistics, we see an increasement of these focused attacks. But as I mentioned, the numbers, we have more numbers to get to better statistics with a higher validity. Yeah. But we see the development.
Yeah, and from a crime enforcement expert perspectives, why are they focusing on the human layer so much?
So much. Okay, we have two types. You have, concerning cybercrime, you have the IT security, you have all the technical level. And if a company, an institution raises the IT security of the level of IT security, and for perpetrators it's very hard to attack that, then you have to go to the human beings, to find a situation. And we live all the day in different situations. I also cannot guarantee myself if nobody else will get me in a moment where I'm full of stress, and with an information that I don't analyze in the normal way I do, and to bring me to a wrong decision. Yeah, you're looking for posts. Yeah, you're waiting for applications for jobs. You get an email application form. You click on it, you open it. So that can happen every day in 20, 30, 40 situations. And we are human beings. We make mistakes, and we live in different situations with different emotions. And if we are on the wrong time at the wrong place, then we can become a victim. That's we cannot avoid that.
Yeah. Unless we know about maybe that specific scheme that is just targeting us. Bringing us a little bit to collaboration. Mike, NATO is by definition, I think, a collaborative organization. But there are also other interfaces, obviously, with the private and public sector and other public sector entities. What are the challenges here, and how can we foster, or what's your current view on collaboration globally on the cybersecurity theater? And how can we even increase that, also still given this fragmented or trend of fragmentation across the world?
That's a great question. I think one of the most important parts, especially for collaboration, NATO hosts a varied amount of exercises, and we invite partners into all these different exercises. And that's key to making sure that we're all on the same page. So, for instance, at my last job, I was at the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence. We'd host an exercise called Lock Shields. One of the biggest pieces with Lock Shields was we would invite corporate sponsors to come in and give us the actual technologies that they use within private industry, infrastructure, everything like that. By getting them on board and convincing them that this is important from a national security aspect and it's good for everybody, we were able to see how threat actors would actually try to break into critical infrastructure, things that we depend on. When you think about NATO, one of our biggest concerns is military mobility. So, for instance, if something would happen in the East, and NATO was, we had an Article 5 act where all of the nations have to come together to defend each other, you would have to get all of the equipment from North America to Europe. When you think about all of the things that the United States brings to the alliance, if a threat actor were to target things like ports or trains or anything like that, and a delay of 24, 48 hours, that has a huge impact on military operations. It has a huge impact on national sovereignty. So that collaboration to, first of all, have the technology, and then the other piece is the coordination. So everybody has doctrine. There's a set of list of things that you're supposed to do in an emergency. But when things actually happen and people feeling stressed, do they follow those points to the T? And if you don't practice that, a lot of times there are assumptions made where, for instance, in the United States, the state government may assume that the federal government's going to do something, or the federal government may assume the state government's going to do something. If you don't get that opportunity to practice and actually talk to people and understand from their point of view what are the important pieces, you really you put yourself in a bad position. So exercises are hugely important for collaboration, and collaboration is the key for us to be successful from a military point of view.
And Andrea is nodding. So collaboration is obviously also an important point in the private sector. But maybe a specific focus on, I mean, you have been a long-standing CISO, and there is a development in the threat landscape. Is this also something you see translated in, for example, budgets, or has it become easier to invest in cybersecurity, which is also one of the key elements for collaboration? Because if the private sector is not doing anything, it's very hard to collaborate. But what's your view on the last year's development?
It sounds weird, but obviously, if you're suffering an attack, it helps me to get more money. It's simple, because the security protection is working on a risk-based approach. You are telling and drawing risk scenarios, presenting to the board, and asking money to protect the company against them. But there are always a likelihood. And when you said this most probably will happen because of the war, because of the changed landscape, because we entered into a new country, they said, okay, but maybe not in this year. So it obviously helps to get more funding, but I hope we can avoid to experience and get the money in that way.
Yeah. Not this year is a good cue, because that's also what we said in Germany about NIS2. And is this regulation, is this something, I mean, how do you look at regulation and compliance from a private perspective?
We are in a special cases. We have already implemented PCI, ISO, SOC 2, TISAX, ADAS, HIPAA, high trust, but not on the whole environment, just partially with some overlapping. And on the top of it, we are experiencing an IS2 DORA, CRA, GDPR, and we're just talking about the EU, but we are far beyond the EU. So it's a very complex environment, and I need a help and a team behind me to collect the necessary information, but first of all, my client, because I'm a call center, I'm not under any of them. I have to deliver it if it's relevant for my clients. So this is a cooperation, and I go back what was said by Mike. Without a cooperation with your clients, with your vendors, it won't work.
Mm-hmm. Collaboration again. We're moving on to the Slido questions, you know, as I'm reading them, there's one for everyone on the panel here, and let's maybe stay positive. But the question is: do you think cybercrime for now will always be a top-level threat, or will it decrease because, yeah, technology in cybersecurity is also increasing and our efforts are increasing? What's your view into the future?
My view, it will be increasing.
Increasing.
Because, that's the human being. We are human beings. This is how the criminals will try to find ways to get our money.
Fred is nodding.
Yes.
He knows criminals. So
as far as our complete world and all the processes become more and more digital, as long we will see in the future an increasing level of cybercrime. If we would decrease the area or the level of digitalization, which won't be possible, I think, then I would expect also a decreasement of cybercrime. But this is linked together.
Mm. No, I feel the same way. It's, we're not going back. We're only going forward. The digital landscape with which our enemies can attack us is just getting larger. And then as we do get better, there's still the human element where, you know, like I said, in NATO, one of the things that makes us unique is we've got people from 32 different nations. So when they come to NATO, a lot of times you're looking to collaborate. And when we talked about things like, you're trying to be helpful. So if you get a phone call from a colleague, you know, from a different nation or something like that, you want to be helpful. And that sometimes you're not second guessing, you know, the content of the call.
Mm. Here's a very specific question for you, Fred, with the ask of being short and sweet with your answer, but very specific and very interesting in my point of view, also talking about the regulation. Is the EU AI Act hindering the BKA in this case, the application of AI for investigations?
Yes, that's a really interesting question, and it's a very important point at the moment inside the BKA and the German police, because there's no extension for us. So like the secret services, they don't fall under regulation of the AI Act, but the police forces do. So we have to check our systems, our applications inside the German police, whether they are AI generated or not. Mm-hmm. So that's really a challenge for us. So that showed us maybe we have not given enough input in the process before the AI Act now was agreed. Now we have the challenge to work with this, and that takes resources and takes time, and we would like to spend the resources for some other cases. But we do our job, and we will be successful, I'm convinced.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, again, a case of how regulation is affecting areas which we probably didn't expect. And we're over time already, so maybe a super quick final question. And we talked about the private and business domain merging. And maybe starting with you, Andrea, what boundaries should organizations set regarding employees' online presence? Or is there a way even to force that upon them?
You know, we are entering in the age when the new generation just become our workforce, and they raised utilizing a lot of digital technology. So it's very hard to remove it from them. So we have to prepare to support the continual utilization via training, via technical measures, if there is any. You already mentioned the private equipments could be dangerous, and you cannot send any controls on them. So we have to learn how we protect this environment. That's the future.
Mm-hmm. And there are many problems or challenges to address, and yeah, but we probably need to work with the people. Huh?
Yeah, and I think the only way how you can make it via your employees. You have to train them, you have to educate them, because you cannot put technical controls on their endpoints. This is their own.
Yeah. Fred, from the enforcement perspective, is probably for police officers, there is a way of limiting their online presence, but what's your take on the overall group of employees across Germany and across Europe?
I think everybody should be aware cybercrime is a present threat. It doesn't decrease, it won't decrease. And to be careful, to study, to learn about the risks, to ask for some kind of support by the companies. And one point is very important for me, that inside institutions and companies, everybody has to implement in the mind, I can become a victim, and it's good recommendation that they implement action plans when the case will happen. If you just get surprised, oh, something had happened, and then start to think about who are the decision makers, what are the next steps we have to do, then you lose so much time, which is so valuable. So really prepare for the case and get a little bit before the attack, and then you have a better reaction capability. That would be my recommendation.
Mm-hmm. And Mike, this is a recommendation you already gave as well, but what else?
Well, no, it's interesting. From military's perspective, it's kind of easy to divorce people. You can take away military members' access to the internet and to social media and to everything else based on the mission that they're doing. Having said that, you want to explain to your soldiers, sailors, Marines, why you're doing it, why it's important. And that way you get better buy-in so that they're not trying to circumvent or come up with creative ways to get back to their social media accounts. And the last piece is, it's not just the soldiers, sailors, Marines, but their families. Their families can definitely become a target for any type of activity that will influence their job performance out in the field. So if your wife, your partner, whoever, has an incident that happens to them because of a cyber incident, and they get affected personally, emotionally, that's going to go back to the sailor, soldier, Marine that's actually in the field trying to perform a job, life and death circumstances.
So a lot of challenges, many recommendations for all of us here. But yeah, I think to sum it up, we have to collaborate. We have to acknowledge that the threat is increasing, complexity is increasing, but there are things we can do. Thank you very much. So a huge round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you so much. Thanks, Fred. And thanks, Mike. Thank you.